Thanks for joining, guys. This is a first meeting in series of workshops that we are planning to do to get you up to speed with test automation and Oxygen and Node.js testing and WebDriver IO. And so it's great you joined. Let's try to make the session more or less dynamic as much as possible in online sessions. So the way it will work today, we will have a really short presentation, about 10 minutes, just to outline the basics for our today workshop. Then we will have a short session for if you have any questions about what I'm just going to show you. And this is why I said I want to be interactive. So, I want just us to kind of, ask questions, maybe some things that you're wondering and so on. So I will be keeping kind of open microphone in between sessions or in between parts of our today's session. So let's do 10 minutes presentation. Let's do then quick Q&A in case you have any questions. Then I will do a quick practical session when I will show you the basics of Oxygen and basics of test automation. We can do then another quick Q&A session, and then I will show you more in-depth things. So let's see how it goes. If we will have enough time remain, we can also do maybe some things by your request. Anyway, hi everyone, I'm Nachum, I'm from Cloudbeat. A few words about myself. I'm software engineer in my background, in testing field for the last probably 15 years. As a developer and now as also CEO of Cloudbeat, I still do a lot of hands-on, and so one of my company's babies is Oxygen. Oxygen is open source framework which is based on Node.js, WebDriver IO, and of course it's based eventually on Selenium, Appium, WinUpDriver, and other open source projects. Today we are going to talk about getting started with Oxygen, and I will try also to make some introduction to Selenium as well. The first part will focus on web technologies. This is our primary focus today. We are planning to do part 2 where we will be more focusing on mobile. Again, feel free to ask also general questions, but just to set the context for today session. If you guys feel that some subjects that I'm raising are completely unfamiliar, again, just drop me a message in the chat. I will try to check and answer your questions in between the parts. Cool. Let's get started. Let me just talk briefly about what is automation framework and what is Selenium and Appium, just to set the context. So Selenium and Appium basically are two probably most popular test automation, I would say, engines. Those are not really a framework, so those are more engines to automate web and mobile technology. I believe there are probably almost every company who has test automation using some way Selenium and Appium behind the scenes. The reason why it's so popular is because it's on one side, it supports a great variety of browsers and devices and languages. So it was a big buy-in for this kind of technology. And on the other side, it's widely supported by community. And so you can find a lot of information, you can find a lot of tutorials, examples, and of course it's open source, which is also a big advantage. So, if you never heard of Selenium, then, you definitely need to read a little bit more about it. But generally saying, if you're a tester, this is one of the things you must know, and at least to get your hands a bit dirty around it. So today, everything we are going to talk about today going to be eventually around Selenium, okay? Some things that we are going to talk will be just strictly around Selenium, and some will be things generally about test automation. So, I assume that today almost every organization or anyone who wants to do test automation will base his test automation on Selenium Appium, even so there are more great tools in the market, such as Cypress and some other frameworks. But again, still majority, I think, using Selenium mainly because of benefit of ability to scale and work on multiple devices and browsers in cloud and locally. So it's a big advantage. Again, today we are not comparing tools. You can join one of our webinars, next webinars, that we will compare different available frameworks. And question is, okay, we have Selenium, so what we need to do next, right? Again, Selenium is an engine. So we need a framework on top of it to be able to write our tests. So, the typical suspects would be TestNG, JUnit, MS Test, classical languages-based unit test frameworks. Actually, today, what I want to show you is a Node.js-based framework that we have contributed. And I want to talk really about reason why it was paying special attention to JavaScript-based frameworks and generally to JavaScript. Today, most of end-to-end testing still is around web technologies. And even when we speak about mobile technologies and, for example, React Native, it's all about JavaScript. Front-end technologies. Also, JavaScript today is one of simplest languages out there and one of most popular. So using the JavaScript will actually reduce a lot of friction, especially to those of you who are not coming from a programming background or don't have a software engineering degree. So JavaScript might be a great language. And even for those of you who are programmers, some of this you will see today, how flexible it could be. And what we want to present is a framework which is based on really best practices we have collected in our long experience, and also some great tools underneath we are using, such as WebDriver IO. So again, today we are going to speak about slightly different frameworks that you probably heard, like TestNG and JUnit, and I will emphasize a few advantages. So just to understand why we generally need framework in testing is that because we need something which facilitates stuff that we need to be able to set up, run, and analyze tests. So it would be, of course, basic setup and tear down, some extendability, ability to manage suits, ability to manage parameters and test data, execute tests, of course, and ideally reports. Well, while the real challenges, in modern testing on top of all this is actually being able to support more than just single technology, right? Because many organizations have web application, mobile, API testing, some have quite a lot of desktop applications and so on and so forth. We want to be modular because we want to share these modules among different team members and among different teams in organization. We want to support multiple reporting formats because some reporting we want just to send straight to our management or other stakeholders. Some we want to push into for example, Jenkins. So we, every framework today which is oriented on especially end-to-end, but not just end-to-end, generally test automation needs to support multiple reporting format. It needs to support multiple browsers, devices. Parallel testing, of course, more tests you have, more time it takes to run them sequentially. Test recording, it's something that I think can put you great up to speed, especially if you don't live inside of dev tools on day-to-day basis. And of course, documentation is very important. You want to be able, whatever you have developed in your framework, you want to be able to share it across organization, be able to attract more people to use it and take your test further. So I want really to introduce you Oxygen. Oxygen is quite unique for a testing framework, which was built upfront in having end-to-end test in mind. and not just end-to-end, but generally integration and modern testing in mind. And what it means is that first, it has very unique 3 layers approach. So Oxygen coming in 3 layers, it's coming as a framework, JavaScript framework at the bottom level, and then you can use it from any JavaScript or Node.js project you like with any IDE of your choice. The second layer is Oxygen IDE, the one you see here on the screenshot. This is a simplified version of IDE dedicated for test automation. As you can see, you can select browsers, you can select devices, you can debug particular things related to Selenium and Appium, which is very handy, especially if we don't have previous experience with development tools. And then the last layer is Oxygen CLI. This is command line layer where you can actually run your Oxygen test either through CI/CD or through terminal and so on and so forth. So it's very flexible and you can use this component separately as you like. You can test with SMSs, you can test emails. So many aspects. You can really create wide integration tests. So this is first reason. It's, as I mentioned, JavaScript based, has a dedicated IDE. It's using all best patterns that you usually need to use in your test automation framework, like page objects, data-driven testing, BDD, and so on. It requires no setup, so you can just start writing your test from the beginning, and we will see it in a moment. And of course, reporting, as I mentioned earlier, every modern framework needs to support multiple reporting formats, needs to support screenshots and more details, and this is definitely what Oxygen does. Why Oxygen, as I mentioned, supports multiple technologies, unique 3-layer approach, powerful recording mechanism, probably one of the best in the market, battle tested on a number of front-end frameworks like Angular, React, jQuery, and so on, and it's used on daily basis already by thousands and of users and many companies. So every time there is something which we can record, so we go back and we add support of either new components or new frameworks. So recording works really well. It suits both developers and testers, and this is a great point to just explain, because in many organizations, testers and developers work side by side. And we definitely ideally want to choose something that works for both tester and developers and don't need to work with a separate tool set. So definitely Oxygen can suit both inside of their Node.js or front-end project, and with the testers who would like more to probably use it or take advantage of Oxygen IDE and create layers of tests based on recording, maybe Cucumber and so on. We have quite a lot of options to do this. And last but not least is the best practices. Guys, we have really implemented here best practices from over 15 years in the field. So many things, you guys read, especially, in typical interview questions or, in typical guidelines are already implemented here. Particular Oxygen 1.0 that was released not that far away. We support Cucumber right now, so you can run your test on core Oxygen framework. I will show you what it is, and on Cucumber as well. We support desktop applications right now using WinUpDriver, which is a Microsoft official project to support Windows-based desktop applications. We have new things like network models, so you can mock your network request, you can assert your network request, and even you can synchronize your test based on different network requests or responses. We support Applitools integration, which is a great visual testing tool. We support, we already moving to WebDriver 6 actually. I need to update the slide here. We support test lifecycle hooks. I will show you today. Integration with South Labs and Lambda test. Again, I will show you some of this today. And we're constantly improving our capabilities. There are some new commands. If we will have enough time, I will show you, like make visible, that we have added. I think that's all, guys, just from presentation perspective. Let me go back to Zoom session. I will see if you have any questions so far. And then we can get started to see first how we record our first test, and we'll then go through different details. And we can then continue to more advanced stuff. Let me then stop sharing. Okay. Yeah, how it sounds so far? I see somebody wrote you losing me from time to time. Is it that bad? I can then try just to change my network, or is it visible? Okay. Yeah, let me try maybe to reconnect to another network. Let's see, it might work better. Just a second. Let me see. Also, if you guys have any particular expectations or anything particular you would like to see today, so please write me down. Let's again try to make the session interactive as much as possible. I know nothing can replace probably physical presence and doing it live, face to face. But we all need to get used to new conditions. Just a moment, I'm just switching to another network. So let. Okay, guys, I have rejoined using a different Wi-Fi setup. Let me know if it's if you can hear me at all, and if it works better for you. Hopefully, yes. Yeah. I will try to show it, Pierre. Yeah, Pierre, I show you. I see your question, so I will try to show you how you can use raw WebDriver IO underneath, and B, I will try to show you later on, if we'll have enough time, just maybe a few implementations of our methods on top of WebDriver IO, so you can better understand how we interact with this framework. Cool. Let me then share my screen again, and let me start with showing you how I do basic recording. Ronen, I'm not, let's see how much time we have, okay? I might show you how to record desktop application if we'll have enough time. I will obviously need to restart my computer to Windows. We are on Mac at the moment, so let's see if we have enough time. And please do, Ronen, remind me toward the end of the session, okay, about your question. And I will see if we have enough time. I will try to show you. If not, I will just show you already recorded script, which works with WinForms, and I will just explain how to do it. Oh, you don't see the questions. Okay, sorry. So yeah, I mean, there were two questions. Pierre asked how's the integration between WebDriver IO and Oxygen. WebDriver is a framework I mentioned that we use behind the scenes. So I already answered this, and I will show it in more details. And then Ronen asked if we are going to show the solution to record Windows desktop applications. Okay. Yeah, we have, so instead of using Report Portal, we have two options. There was a question about integrations of Report Portal. So we have a number of options. We have our own internal reporting in Oxygen. number of formats, and plus we have integration with Cloudbeat. Cloudbeat is our SaaS-based test orchestration analytics service. So you can either use Oxygen internal reporting or hook it to Cloudbeat, which will provide you even more extended analytics capabilities. Guys, when you ask questions, please select not all panelists, but select all panelists and attendees, okay? Then everyone will see the questions. I'm sharing my screen with you. And in your chat, you have this option to select who you're writing questions to. So just also select attendees as well, so we all can see the questions. Okay, guys, let's move forward. Let's move forward with Oxygen ID. So as I explained, Oxygen is based on multiple layers, and I will start with a layer that really simplifies working with test automation and with Selenium and Appium, and this is Oxygen ID. So Oxygen ID allows you to create test script, and basically you can either just create it manually as the same way you would do it in Java or any other programming language, or you can actually just create it from recording. So let's start with creating it from recording, and we can then see how we tweak and work with it also manually. So I just press here the microphone button. This puts me into recording mode. And all I need to do is just go ahead and open a new Chrome browser. What's happening behind the scenes, we have, as you can see here, we have a special Oxygen plugin installed. So you can either install it from Chrome Store, or if you are on Windows and you're installing Oxygen, then Oxygen installation will install it for you automatically. So either way, I have already pre-installed, and then all we need to do is just go ahead and for sake of today exercise, we will use Wikipedia website. So what we could do, we can just go here and enter Wikipedia website, and this gives us an ability, as you can see, already recorded. Yeah, probably I pressed something, so it recorded it twice. Usually, normally it will record this too. So you see it's recorded here, the init part. I will explain you what it is, and it also recorded the open action. It's JavaScript. What you see is JavaScript, but I call it human readable JavaScript. Okay, so we structured it in purpose in a way so you can almost read it, right? So web and then we open the page. So it's pretty much straightforward. Now I can carry on and keep recording. So I can go, for example, right here, testing. I can press here button, and here we are. Okay, if I go back, I can see more lines have been recorded. I will explain you them in a moment. Okay, but basically what Oxygen does, it follows everything we do and converts it to Selenium script. Okay, one more thing I want to show you is our right-click context menu plugin here. So you can basically stand on particular elements or add the general assertions like this one. So for example, I can take it here and add title assertion. So if I go back to the script, okay, so I can see here assert title, right? So now, not just I do what I call click-through, not I'm just doing some user actions, I have also added some kind of automatic assertion, okay? So let's now stop recording. All you need to do is just press on microphone button again, and that's it. So we have our first Selenium script. And of course, what would be very much recommended is just to save it as a file. So if I go here and I click save, okay, so I will just go ahead, and I actually created a special folder for our today workshop. So I will go ahead and save it there. Okay, one more thing, what I want to open is basically we can open two things in Oxygen. We can open a folder and we can open a file. So I will go ahead and open this very special folder we have created. here it is, just to show you what we have, right? So we have opened the folder, and then Oxygen shows us all files that are located in this folder. Again, the reason why it's called simple is that at the moment we don't have any project configuration. We will learn about it slightly later today. So we just have created a single JavaScript file, and this is our test. And we can actually run it as is without need to install anything or use things like npm models and stuff like this. Okay, so this is my script. I will just remove here duplicated line, and all I need to do now to run it is select the browser I want to run and press run button. Okay, that's simple. Behind the scenes, those of you who know that we need some kind of WebDriver interface, so we have Selenium server running here behind the scenes. Okay, so it's already built in. So now what I do, I just press run button, and you will see somewhere here, at the moment you will see, here we go. So we see a new Chrome browser open, and our scenario is running. As you can see, because this is all local, it's really fast, okay? And here we go, we have the results, it's passed, the script works, okay? So just to show you how fast we have created the first script. Now let's drill down and understand what we have in this script, okay? So the first thing to note here is that we have this web thing repeating in each line. Now, I don't know if you remember, but I mentioned that Oxygen is modular framework. So we have around 10 different models, okay? And one of them is web. Web is basically wrapped around Selenium. So anything you want to write based on Selenium will go inside web model. Okay, so what you do, web and .init, and those of you who are familiar with Selenium, you know that we need to create a session. Okay, and those of you who are not familiar, I will just explain that basically how Selenium works behind the scenes is that there is a kind of web server. Okay, we call it WebDriver or Selenium server that's waiting there for you to knock on the door and ask to work with particular browser. For example, in this case, we have asked to work with Chrome, right? So what we do, the Selenium server here is basically a web server. So we're knocking on the door and we say, hey, we want to now open a Chrome browser and start simulating user actions. And so in order to be able to work with Chrome, we need to open the session. And this is what the first line does. So web.init actually goes ahead, establishing a contact with Selenium server and passing what called capabilities. So those of you who already know what capabilities, you can see that we have no capabilities here. I will explain to you why in a moment. But generally saying capabilities is a set of demands or set of requirements we are asking Selenium server from our session to fulfill. For example, the most obvious is browser name, right? So in order for Selenium server to know which browser to open, we need to tell the capability, which is called browser names, that we want Chrome in this case. Now here in Oxygen, init method can accept capabilities, as you can see here in the method signature. But if you don't pass any capabilities, then capabilities will be derived from here, the one you select, okay? So, if I'm not here, if I want to select Safari, right? Then we will run the test on Safari, okay? And behind the scenes, what's happening behind the scene is that Oxygen is smart enough to generate capabilities for Safari and just run the test, okay? Here we go. So, okay, so we just switch between Safari and Chrome, and behind the scenes, Oxygen has generated the right capabilities, okay? So the first line is just we initializing the Selenium session. The second line, web open, as it sounds, is just opening a page. So before we can do any action, we can actually go ahead and open some page. So here we open a Wikipedia page. Now this line, select window, is actually, in this case, is not necessary, but some applications, some web applications require or work with multiple windows. You all know that we click on some link and then we have a pop-up opened or a new Windows or new tab has been opened. So when we record it, just in case, to make sure that in case we have multiple Windowses, then we select the right one. So you have the select window again, it's not necessary here. And then The nice thing here is that some of you who know what are Selenium locators to note is that we generating all possible locators to an element. Those of you who don't know what locators, let me explain you. So basically, the way any test automation works, but particularly web automation, is that in order to do some action, for example, if I want to click, I don't know, this link, right? I need to first identify this element on the page, okay? Because I can say just click exam link, right? I need to identify it in some way. And there are a number of ways we can identify it. The particular way we choose to identify element called locator or selector, depends. It's basically more or less the same. And there are a number of different selectors in Selenium. So there are ID-based selector, name-based, XPath, CSS-based, and so on. We will not get in too much details at the moment about all those selectors, or perhaps we will do another more advanced session just to talk about it. But just briefly to show you what I mean, you know, if I go to DevTools and, you know, what I did right now, oops, we have some breakpoints, I don't know why. Anyway, what I did right now here, it's very important that you guys as a testers, you know, will feel very comfortable to do. And so I right click and I'm inspecting the element. And now I see actually HTML representative of all this page, in particular of this element. So, you know, again, you don't need to do it with Oxygen because Oxygen will record it for you. But still, I think if you plan your career in test automation field and you are not test automator already, then definitely worth you to both work more extensively with DevTools and just learn HTML basics. Anyway, so we can see that this link has certain attributes here. And if I want to click on it, I need to tell to Selenium engine which one of these attributes, or which generally how I can distinguish this element from any other elements on the page. So those are locators. And now, if going back to Oxygen, you can see that we have pre-selected different locators for you. So you can see we have selected ID-based locator, name-based, attributes, XPath, and so on. And the nice thing is that we always select a strongest locator. So you can see that in this case, we have selected ID, okay? So just, you know, I will go back in scenario to explain you here, right? So we're talking about this input element, okay? And so we have selected the strongest one, ID, but there are plenty other ways to get and reach this element. And you can find all these ways here. So it's really up to you which one to use, or, you know, if one of them stopped to work, you can use another one later on. The same goes here. You see, click element. This one a little bit more tricky because it doesn't have a clear ID. So you can see that we have selected here XPath, which has some ID element. And so our engine has chosen it because it thinks it's the strongest one. But you can go also with other type of selectors like CSS and so on. Anyway, as you can see here, it's pretty simple. So you have few basic operations like open, type is entering a text, click is clicking on element, and at the end we assert title. Okay, so we just expect the title would be this one. Now it's really nice idea because you have all different models and all commands here listed. So we have IntelliSense, which you can see there are quite a few Selenium commands and generally Oxygen commands here, which you can use. We'll have a quick overview later on some commands that we will not see today. Anyway, you can see how simple it is just to create a basic Selenium script. And you know, you can either enrich it. For example, we could replace here hard-coded parameter with something from file. We will do it in a moment. Or you can just keep it as is, or you can wrap it around. For example, if you want a Cucumber project, right? So you can just use a recording for your basic implementation of your Cucumber actions. And then you can create a whole Cucumber project around it. Again, the nice thing is that if you just want to get started, is that Oxygen can run just a single JS script. You don't need to build any infrastructure or use any around models or anything around it. And the same will go through CLI. We'll show you slightly later on. Okay, guys, so just was a recording part. I will now switch to your questions just to see if you have. I see there are some questions here. So again, let's do a short Q&A break. and then we can carry on with seeing more advanced stuff, what we could do with how we could enhance our recording. Okay, so yeah, I see here was asking question, instead of launching my test on my computer, can I assign a link endpoint instead to Docker environment like Selenium? Yeah, of course, you can easily do it. So I will reshare my screen again. It's a good point here. So if we see an init pattern, right, init method pattern, you see the first parameter is capabilities, caps, and the second one is Selenium URL. And so what you could do here, if you don't have any capabilities, you could do null, okay? And then you could do any external web, you know, Selenium grid or Selenium, for example, I don't know, southhub.southlabs.com, right? And this is how you could basically run your test again, any external environment. You could also parameterize it, okay? And you can take it from parameter, for example, from environment variable. Okay, but this is how you can run it. Another thing, if we're already speaking about external environment or external infrastructure, Oxygen is already integrated with plenty of cloud providers. You can find South Labs, Lambda Test, Perfecto, and some more testing both among the integrations we already have. So for example, so you can see here, I'm already have entered my username and access key to South Labs. So if I want to run this test now on South Labs, okay, all I need to do is switch from local to South Labs, okay? And the great thing here is that I can actually see what are available browsers and devices in my South Labs account. So if I want to run this on Chrome 80, right? Here we go. I just do this. And all I need to do is just press run button. So in this case, I don't need to change anything in init method. We will inject the right Selenium grid URL behind the scenes, okay? Yeah, so you will see this test is running at the moment, and we can actually, if we go ahead, we can see it's running in South Labs account. I don't know if we will have enough time to see it, but maybe we will. Just a moment. Yeah, so if I want just to see live, or let's see automation. Yeah, here we go. We have a test that we ran a minute ago on Chrome and Windows Server, and you can see it all here, okay? And here we have it passed. So again, if you want to run against your own environment, like Selenium, for example, you just add parameters here in init method. If you want to run against some standard popular cloud providers, then you know we most likely are integrated with them. It's pretty easy to do. Okay, I'm just back to your questions. Okay, yeah, I guess you saw my screen, right? Okay. Yeah, you can rearrange, Serge asked if you can rearrange locators, you can rearrange locators, you can add custom ones, and moreover, you can add, you can create page object pattern and work with multiple locators. And so I'm going to show you how we work with page object in a moment. So it's pretty flexible. Let's see, I wonder if the tool is able to perform tests like uploading file. Yeah, it can definitely. We have a special file upload method. Generally, it's a good point just to show, you know, as you ask questions, I will show you more and more things that are coming up on my mind in Oxygen. So first of all, I do all encourage you to go to our documentation page. It's docs.oxygen.org. You can find quite a few tutorials, video tutorials here, and generally I do encourage you to subscribe to Cloudbeat YouTube channel. A lot of interesting stuff you can find there. So back to your question. So you can see oxygen models, and if we go to web, the one we just used, okay, so yeah, in this case, I can see all web commands here, right? And you can see file browse, okay? So you can see an example how you can basically upload your local file, okay, into certain form element. And you will find a lot of this type of hacks in Oxygen actually, okay? You will find things like make visible. If you have troubles clicking on element, you will find different implementations like scroll to element, when you can actually scroll to element if it's not visible on the page. We have, for example, point.js method when the regular, when you need to point with your mouse on something, it doesn't work. So we have a special method which called point.js. We have click hidden method, which allows you to click on elements that are not visible to Selenium, and so on and so forth. Again, there are many workarounds, and we call it pillows that we added to reduce the friction and flakiness of working with Selenium and handling different situations. Wait, I haven't shared my screen. Yeah, sorry guys. Yeah, so here we go. This is our Oxygen documentation page, Oxygen docs, docs.oxygenhq.org. You go to Oxygen models. This is a place where you can find all different models. And I have selected web models, the one we are currently working. And you can see all different methods we have. Particularly about file upload, we have file browse method, which basically what it does, it simulates file upload into particular form element. So you can specify your local files that you want to upload and form elements that actually handles the file upload, okay? Hope it answers your question. Let's see what more questions we have. Yeah, Nadia, hopefully I reshared my screen, so hopefully you managed to see it. The thing is that when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the chat, so this is why I'm turning on and off my screen sharing, just to see if you are asking more questions. Oxygen doesn't support Python. Oxygen is based on Node.js. But first of all, PyTest is a great framework, but I do encourage you to check generally JavaScript-based frameworks, because JavaScript is also very powerful, as powerful as Python. And the big advantage of JavaScript over Python in end-to-end testing, on front-end testing, is that you can then work really closely with your front-end development team, and they can even collaborate with you at some tests and help you resolve some issues finding elements. While if you use Python and they use JavaScript on front end, then it might create kind of difficulties in communication. Okay, guys, I think, let me see, there is one more question. Are you going to show Windows on Windows only? Ronit, I'm not sure I understand your question, but right now I'm on Mac, so I'm showing everything on Mac. If we will have enough time, I'm going to switch to Windows and show how we can automate desktop applications, because this will require Windows. Anything else, web, mobile, API, or any other type of test, do not require particular operating system. Oxygen works on all three operating systems, on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Okay, so hopefully this answers your question. Cool. Okay, let's carry on. So I'm resharing my screen again. Okay, hopefully you can see it. I'm going back to oxygen. We haven't finished yet with the idea. And there are some few more things I want to show you. So first of all, I want to show you how we can work with test data. Okay, so I will switch back here to my local execution. So I want to show you how we can work with test data, and then I want to show you how we can run responsive tests using our very special responsive mode here. So just again, just to show you where you have a configuration screen. So you see this one here, you click on it, and then you have different configurations here. So one is in general, the one we are going to use right now. I just already show you the cloud providers. This is where you can enter your cloud provider details to gain the integrations that I just show you. We have also South Labs integration. So if you use ApplyTools, sorry, not South Labs, ApplyTools, if you use ApplyTools, you can integrate it here. And the one which we right now I want to focus you is this one. So here you can set number of iterations you want to run. We'll set in a moment. You can define how we use session if we run in multiple iterations. So if we run 2 or 3 or more times, we can either reopen session, Selenium session each time, or we can just utilize the same session over and over again. And the one that I really want to show is this one, use parameter files. So say we want now to enter different values here, right? So we were using testing word here, and we want now to use, say we want to one time enter testing, one time we want to enter Selenium. So what we could do, we could create here basically a text file. I will copy it from here. Let me copy it and show it to you. Cool. So this is just a regular CSV file. You can also use Excel file. It doesn't really matter. What you do, you can create multiple columns, by the way. Most important thing is that in the first row, you will define the name of variable you will use in Oxygen. So here the variable is term. I can use anything here, right? I can use blah, blah, or whatever I want. And then from second row onwards, those are the values I want to use in different iterations. So if I will copy this one, and I will go back to Oxygen. And here, instead of testing, I will replace it with $sign and this one. This is how you use parameters in Oxygen. Okay, so here Oxygen will expect term parameter, whatever it is, right? Now, so first step is we replace the constant value by parameter. The second step now, we will let Oxygen know that we want to use this file, okay? Now Oxygen will read this file sequentially, and for each iteration, it will select first row for first iteration, second row for second iteration, and so on. You can also optionally select random row selection. In this case, Oxygen will select on each iteration, will select a random row. Now, in order to see that it's actually using multiple values, I will just increase the amount of iterations to 2. So we will now rerun this test locally on Chrome browser, and we'll see that first time it will enter Selenium keyword, and then another one, it will enter Appium keyword. Okay, so let's run it. Yeah, you see we have Selenium here. Okay. Now you remember we had this assertion line. I'm just show you back Oxygen. Oops. Let us resize it and see them side by side. Okay. Here we go. You see, first of all, we have a green arrow, which shows where we are right now. So right now we are on select window element. And remember, we were looking for test keyword. Right now, you can see that Windows title is Selenium. And this is why we fail here, okay? So we need to pay attention. when we use parameter, okay, we need also to make sure that any elements, textual elements we either assert or click or use are in line with the parameter we use, okay? So right now, Oxygen will wait for 60 seconds, okay? Because this is a default timeout period to make sure that title hasn't changed. And here we're running another iteration, and now we're searching for Appium. And we will have the same issues here, actually, okay? So we will have the same issue here. We will again fail on select window, right? So what I can do right now, I can either wait for 60 seconds for another iteration to fail, or I can just stop it, right? I can just close this window, and just in sake of our test, we can remove this one. And another one which I want to show you is set a timeout, web.set timeout, okay? We want to reduce timeout here just for us not to wait that much long, so we can reduce it to 5 seconds. Okay, the timeout is a millisecond, so 5,000 milliseconds is 5 seconds. Another one I would like to do, so in this one we will add testing. Okay, and where I'm actually heading is just to show you that for first iteration it will succeed because the title will be test, but it will fail on second iteration when we will have keywords using Selenium. Okay. So just to show you kind of a simple data-driven testing example. So let's rerun it again. Okay. So this iteration will succeed because eventually we got to the testing page. And this one will not, because we will have a different page title here, okay? Now, what we could do in this case, and you see we very detailedly outlined the error, so you can see assertion error, and then you can see that we have expected a certain title, but we got a different titles than we have expected. Now, the way to overcome this one is that we can put title as a second column here, okay? So we can say title. And what I could do here is just to remember that we have added this testing stuff. So testing, right? And I can add title here. So this is title for testing, and this is title for Selenium. So let's find Selenium. Let's see what title we have. Yeah, you can see it's here, Selenium Wikipedia. So basically I could do this one. Yeah, and of course we can do the same for Appium. I will just delete it in sake of save some time. So I have saved this right now, and I need then to add another variable called title, okay? So I can now assert title, and I want to show you another way we can refer to parameters. So one way is to refer using this one. Another way to refer to parameters is using params keyword, and we can use then parameter named title. Okay, so if you need to use parameters, for example, in some kind of string concatenation, then you can use it in this way, params dot, and then the name of parameter. If you want to use it in lines, then you can just use it in this way, okay? So there are a number of ways to use parameters, okay? I can double check here that, let's see, yeah, here we go. So we have now 2 columns, okay? And we use params.title here. And let's see how it works for us. So we'll rerun the test right now. Yeah, seemed to work. Cool. Now, just to show you that I'm not showing you some, you know, some magic here. If I will add here, for example, something which will just invalidate our title, and I will run it again, then you will see it will fail. Yeah, you can see that at the moment it can't find the right suitable title, and here we go. The first iteration failed. The second iteration will succeed. Okay. Cool. Let's see. I will open questions again just to make sure you haven't asked anything, or if you did, then let me answer it. Just a second. Okay, I see no questions so far. Guys, if you can just indicate that you are still with me and you can hear me, it will be really nice. Okay, cool, cool. Okay, let's carry on then. What I want to show you right now is some more advanced stuff that you could do. Obviously, you know, in real test automation projects, you might end up having slightly more complex scenarios. So I want to show you how we can actually gain, you know, add some more spice to it, okay? So let me reshare my screen with you. Cool. And let me open some you know, slightly more advanced projects that we have in our Git repository, and I'm happy to share it with you later on. It's called Oxygen Example ng. The reason why ng, because Angie Jones have shown it and her talk about oxygen. So we have created some examples here. And let me also show you some more, you know, more structured way we use oxygen here. So yeah, so let's go one by one and overview things. So you can find some files here that you didn't see before. You can see they all start with oxygen, and it goes oxygen.conf, inf, and po. So I think the conf one is probably obvious. This is a configuration file. So, you know, once your project is going and growing, and you know, you add more and more tests and more functionality, you will probably end up needing to add configuration file. And there are a number of things you can do in configuration files that are very handy comparing to just running one test one by one. You can create multiple suites, okay? So you can run multiple test cases, either in parallel or sequential, but you don't have to run them one by one. And from suite perspective, Oxygen is very flexible because you can either define suites in configuration file, or you can define it in external file here in suites folder, okay? You can define different capabilities, and the same goes for capabilities. You can either define them in a configuration file, or you can define them per suite in external files. So it's really up to you. You can also define parallel testing. So Oxygen supports parallel testing out of box. So this is concurrency. So if you add here more browsers, for example, here we have 2 browsers, I can change concurrency to 2. Then I will have all my tests are running in parallel in both browsers, okay? More things here to note is services. So basically, from Oxygen architecture perspective, it has models and it has services, okay? So models we already talked about. You can see some of them here. It's web, mob, win, and many others. And from services perspective, services is something that's working across different models. So for example, we have Selenium standalone, which means if you're running Oxygen from command line, you can run Selenium before you run any test. There is no need to do it in Oxygen ID because Oxygen ID is already running Selenium server here. The one which is really interesting and important is the DevTools model. The DevTools model allows you to access what we call what basically Chrome calls DevTool protocol, and this is things, you know, do different tweaks and tricks with Chrome browser. For example, you can stop network requests and responses, and so on and so forth. So I will show you in a moment example for this one, but if you want to use our network model, you will have to enable this one. Here you can specify which models you use. If you don't need to use particular models, for example, if you don't need to use, I don't know, PDF model here, then we recommend to keep this list short. The reason why is because it takes a few seconds for Oxygen to load each model. So if you use all models, then your startup time will be, say, 5-6 seconds. If you run a lot of tests, it might be annoying. So you might want for longer tests and for more extensive debugging, you might want to reduce amount of models Oxygen preloads, especially if you are not using them. Another thing here is the frameworks. At the moment, Oxygen supports its internal framework structure and Cucumber. I will show you Cucumber project later on today. So by default, this is the Oxygen structure, and Oxygen structure means that each test case is defined in separate JavaScript file, okay? And test case name is as a name of the file. So this is a basic Oxygen structure. If you want to structure it, for example, using Cucumber, then you could change it here in Cucumber, and then you can divide your test and feature files and so on. Reporting. Reporting, Oxygen supports different reporting formats. And by the way, it's very easy also to write your own reports or contribute other reports. For example, somebody mentioned, I think, extend reports. So, you know, you are welcome to contribute. Sorry, there are some crazy dogs running around the office. So you can very easily either extend a report or just use our reports. As you see, we have JSON format support, HTML, JUnit XML support, Excel, PDF, and XML. So, you know, it probably will give you enough report formats to get started. And of course, most likely you will run your test within CI/CD environment, which in most cases you will probably use JUnit XML format anyway. You can, by the way, specify multiple formats. For example, here we specify JSON format, but I can also specify HTML format here. In this case, Oxygen will generate both reports, okay? Generally, what Oxygen does is generating a reports folder. It creates a reports folder underneath your project folder. So this is our project folder, so you can see reports, okay? And then under reports, it creates a folder with a current timestamp. So each run will have a separate folder, and then in this folder you will find the main report file, depends on the format. So if it's JSON, then you will find JSON file. And then, of course, you will find the screenshots or any supporting materials that, you know, in case it's relevant, they will be included in the report. You have ApplyTools support here, so you can see you can specify your ApplyTools key here. And this is, you know, might be important, depends how complex your tests are, is hooks, okay? And so you can see we have different hooks here. We have before test, before suit, before case. So those of you who used to work with either WebDriver IO or frameworks like JUnit, TestNG are familiar with test hooks. Sometimes we need them to initialize stuff. For example, sometimes we need them to initialize some test data before we run our test, or to, for example, open a browser before we run different tests. Again, in most cases, you probably will not use it because we do encourage you for each test case to initialize Selenium inside the test case, not in a hook itself. But in some cases, it might be handy and you might be using it here. So you can see some examples here. So this is a configuration file. We have environment file. So this is where you can define environment variables. I will show you some usage here, but this is, we have a default. Default is the ones that if you are not specifying any environment, then it will use values here. And you can define different variables here. For example, you can define, I don't know, username. here, right? And then you can define the same set of variables for different environments here. So you can define prod environment, test environment. And in case you want Oxygen will use this one and not the default, you need to specify environment when you run Oxygen from command line. Page object. This is something very handy. So page object allows you to define either one centralized page object file, or you can separate them to multiple files and just integrate them here. The reason why it's a constant name here, Oxygen PO, is that because Oxygen will automatically collect and aggregate all your page object files and will expose it to you in PO variable. I will show you in a moment. But this is a way how we define page object. You can also define as a classical ES6 class if you like. But this is really more simple way to define page object. It will be probably recommended for most cases. So yeah, let's see. So in case we have this classical Oxygen project structure, then your test cases will usually go to test folder. And let's see some of them. So this is our classical Selenium test. We do some slightly more advanced stuff here. So you can see we go to automationbookstore.dev website. We type some text. We wait for some screen to show up. And then we count how many books with this title we have found, okay? So you can see we use command which called find elements, which returns how many, all elements we have, which, which are, which meet this kind of locator requirement. And then the length one basically will count them. So how many of them we have. And then we do the assert. Okay, so we have also custom assert model. So it's important to note. So we have inside of web, we have built-in assertion commands, which will work particularly on Selenium. Like you see, you can assert alert. You can assert if element exists. You can assert, if you have select element, text present, title, value, and so on. So those are asserts related particularly to Selenium. And we have general assert model when you can assert things like this. So you can just take one variable and say one constant value like here, and you can assert or compare between themselves. So quite, quite flexible assertion mechanisms. And basically the same goes for other models. So we have Windows model and mobile model, which have their own dedicated assertions methods. So this is how assertion works. I can just run this again, very simple way, just pressing run button, and we'll go ahead with this. You can see that we started with a hook. So you can see, here we go, right? And this is a book we are testing. Okay, now we will run it twice because we still have this stuff applied. Okay, so we'll just switch it off for now. Okay. Basically, the settings here are persistent for the last session. So as long as you have Oxygen open, the settings will apply. So this is the Selenium one. You can see the same scenario now implemented with page objects. And now you can see that we have a PO prefix here. And then through PO, you can have access to all your page object element defined here. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with page object pattern concept, I will explain what it means. Once your test automation project extends and getting bigger and bigger, and you have more pages, involved in your project, then you probably wouldn't like to do something like this, right? The disadvantage of the way this script is written is that we have explicitly specified all the locators here. Now, why it's not good? Because if, for example, this element changes, or say this element changes, right? Developer have moved it, has changed some attributes of it. Then if we have this element defined as a page element in one central place, then we need to change it only once. And this element then could be used from different test cases and from different scripts. And we don't need to change it in multiple places. On the other side, if we use it like this, and it will be spread all over in different test cases because many times the elements are, recurrent. They appear over and over again in different screens. So, and it's life that our application is undergoing changes, especially if we are at the beginning or in the middle of a development process. And so it's really recommended once you have more than a couple of test cases or test scripts is actually to move all this element. And actually, if you could just start it from very beginning. I mean, once you create the project, just start to move everything to page objects. And the way it works, just to explain you, is this is kind of JSON structure. So you just, you invent the page name. So in this case, it's a search page. We can call it anything we like. And then under search page, we will define first our elements. So as you can see, we derive URL from base URL. If you remember base URL, we have defined here, okay? And then we define number of elements that are attached to search page, right? So we have a search bar, we have, hidden books, we have visible books, right? So we define it all here. We can also define it as array, okay? So I can define here multiple locators, okay? And we will know how to handle it. Now, once I have defined my locators here, I will define now my methods, which I will call from the script. I'm not using these elements directly from my script. I'm using the methods which wrap them up. So for example, I have open one. This one, I will open the page using the URL defined here, okay? So this.url means this one that we have defined here. I have a search one. So you see I'm searching my text here. Again, you see how I utilize the locator I have defined here in previous section. And I also accept external parameter called query, okay? And so if I go back here, you see how readable it is. So page.search, and then I'm entering the search string I want to provide. And so another thing I added here is a wait for exist. So I already know what element will appear on the next page. So I'm adding here a wait, so I will synchronize my script, okay, between different pages. And the same here, get number of visible books. So I do this find elements, and then I return number of elements we have found. So suddenly from, very technical script like this, and not too very maintainable, I got something like this, which really can be shared among different team members, and it's also super readable and super maintainable, okay? So this is basically a page object pattern and how we use it here, okay? Those of you who are familiar with Node.js could note that we have commented out the require. We don't need it, because this is done automatically by Oxygen. So Oxygen will automatically discover your page object and will preload them for each of your test scripts. Let's see, I see some questions, comments there. Let me see. Oh, maybe I can. Oh, cool. I can actually see chat here. Okay. Yeah, we'll get into network data in a moment. Okay, cool. Okie dokie. So yeah, let's go now to some more advanced stuff. So we spoke about Selenium, we spoke about page objects. Let's see network, okay? Here we go, okay, here. So let's first understand how network model works. So again, I will go to DevTools, okay? So if we go to DevTools, and we open network tab, right? And we just refresh this page or any other page. It doesn't really matter, okay? So, oops. Wait. I can see all of them. Yeah, all, cool. Here we go. Yeah. Then I will see a lot of network requests, okay? And I guess you guys know that the web page is based off the main page, which is HTML page, and it then can consist of different resources like images, CSS files, and so on. Plus, it can include also what's called here XHR requests or AJAX requests. Those are additional requests to the backend, and those are usually APIs. We're actually testing when we test APIs that actually bring us additional data, especially if we're talking about single-page applications, and we'll find a lot of those requests undergoing when we loading our page. Now, what our model does, network model does, it connects to Chrome, okay? And it gets a list of all these requests that are generated when our page is loaded. And so to enable this, what we do, as you can see here, we do web.network.start. So this will start recording the same way as I did here, right? I went to network tab to start recording, and you see here is a button which I can start and stop recording. The same thing we are doing here, right? When we do web.network.start, this is where we start our recording. By default, Oxygen doesn't record the network because there is some slight overhead, okay? So when we do record the network, the browser is slightly slower than usual, okay? And it shouldn't have too much impact on your performance, but you know, just to be more resource aware. So by default, this is off. So when you do it, web.network.start. Now it's important, the network model works only with Chrome browser, okay? So you could do it only if you run it against Chrome browser at the moment, okay? We are still waiting for Firefox to support DevTools protocol. There is a nightly build that supports it. So I believe we will be able soon to do it in Firefox as well. But at the moment, it's supported in Chrome only. It will be, by the way, interesting to see if Edge would be able to support it, because Edge seems to really stick more to Chrome than Firefox. Anyway, let's carry on. Then what we do, we open the page, okay? So because we need something to generate this request. So if we just start recording, we still have no request being generated. So when we open it, already Oxygen started to collect all these requests. And then there are a number of things we could do, right? So there are assert URL, as you can see here. So I can actually assert the URL and I can wait for it, okay? So for example here, we'll make sure that product.js file has been loaded. I can assert a status code. So it might be that I need a special status code, okay? By default, we are asserting that status code is 200, which is okay. But in some cases, I might need something more advanced than this. And then we can also assert a content, okay? I can make sure that this string product.data appears in the response. So it's not equal assertion, it include assertion, okay? So it makes sure that whatever we specify here is included in the response, okay? On top of it, we can wait for element, okay? So we can use here wait for URL, okay? And a new Oxygen version, we can also mock requests, okay? So this is what we can do. If we run this example here, okay, on Chrome browser, then you see that if some requests will be missing, that our test will fail. Okay, if, for example, I can change it here, and in this case, this test should fail. I don't know why I didn't fail, but it's supposed to. Anyway, let's leave it for now. Let me double check why it didn't. But this is how network assertion works. Okay, Pierre, I hope it answers your question. Let's carry on. PDF. This might be very handy for, especially for if you're testing a financial application. So what you can assert PDF content. So you can see if certain text appears and how many appearances of this text should be. And you can also specify what error to throw if your you know, if your assertion fails. So for PDF, we have this one, and we have negative assertion as well. So you can assert if something doesn't appear in PDF. And we have also count. So you can count if certain things appear, right? Especially it's a nice one if you want to see if certain elements appear, you know, twice or 3 times, or, you know, signature appears on each page and stuff like this. So this is a PDF model. Mobile. So this one, again, today workshop is more about web, but just to mention it, that we have a mobile model, which is again wrapper around Appium. And in this case, you can see, for example, here we work with mobile capabilities, and again, Oxygen supports mobile as well. So what you can do, instead of specifying capabilities here, you could just select your mobile device if you're running mobile test. And then you can see that it's pretty much similar to web model. It has some specific mobile commands like install app and stuff like this, but in most commands, mob and web model are very similar. We have email assertions here. So for example, you can see I can initialize my email client here, and then I can get last mail and make sure that it's, you know, either asserted or, for example, extract, right? Today, many applications have OTP, right? Some code, which I receive either through SMS or through email. So for example, I can check my email here, extract the code, and then enter it in my UI test. We have also special SMS model based on Twilio, by the way, so you can do the same for SMS. This is a database one, so again, you can connect to your database and you can then execute some query, or you can assert some results, okay? Very handy. And the same API. So we have 2 API models. We have REST-based API, which is here that you can see HTTP GET, and we have special SOAP model. Okay, so if you're working with SOAP, then you could use SOAP. The big difference is SOAP has slightly different request structure, and its output is XML, while in most cases, the REST API will work over JSON. Anyway, because we use JavaScript, you can see how easy it is here in this example. Is just to serialize JSON and do different asserts here, right? So for example, here you can see we're running this example. And again, we will open here browser, not because we're running it inside browser, just because we have webhook, test hook, which does it. But you can see here, I'm printing out the JSON I got back structure, and I can actually assert it in a very simple way here, okay? And this is, by the way, great advantage of using JavaScript, because JavaScript is really native with JSON. So in simple way, you can convert any JSON to simple JavaScript object, which is great. It really simplifies how you work with JSON. And you can manipulate, of course, within JSON and then serialize it back to string or to any other format. So this is API testing. We have, as I mentioned, ApplyTools integration here, so you can use checker window if some of you using visual testing. Now we have Windows model here. Actually, Aran just wrote me that he sent me a video. So let me just try to open the video and show it to you. So it will save me to booting to Windows operating system. But this is basically how Windows model looks. Again, it Win instead of web. Most of things you will probably use click and type, which are similar to web. The only thing is that you need to pay attention how you initialize your web driver when you work with WinUp So in this case, if you work with standard Windows applications like calculator, you just can say calculator. Another way is that you can specialize application ID in Windows Store, or you can specify a full path to your application. So you can say C, right, program files, and so on. Okay, so you can either specify a path to your exec file, or if it's a web store application, Windows Store application, then you can specify it. Or if it's a well-known application, for example, you're just exercising with Oxygen, So you can specify here calculator, you can specify here notepad, and so on, okay? Most of things are, in case of Windows module are the same. The only thing is recording is done not here. So this recording will not work for Windows applications. What you do, you use Appium Desktop. So those of you who don't know Appium Desktop. So this is a standard utility that coming with Appium. And maybe I can actually show it you here. And we are integrated in Appium Desktop. So in Appium Desktop, when you launch it, you can actually record Windows applications and you can generate Oxygen code. We will probably see it in the video in a moment. Okay, so just a moment. Let me open up a video for you. Yeah, just a second. I'm just downloading the video file. In the meantime, I will share with you Appium Desktop. Yeah, so this is Appium Desktop. Basically, Appium works today not just with mobile. Most of us know Appium is just a mobile testing, but Appium today includes also WinApp, which is a Selenium-based web driver that Microsoft have developed to support Windows applications. And so in case you will work with the Windows, then you just launch an inspector, and let's see if we will see it in the movie. Perhaps we have it. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see this is our example. It probably will not include recording because I see it's a short video. But you can see that you just launch it. To launch the desktop application test, you need to have Appium server open. And you can see here we have this green arrow, right? And you can see how fast it works. And we just, did a standard calculator scenario, okay? Again, if you are already guys familiar with working with Selenium, then working with desktop application will be probably a piece of cake for you because eventually it's all the same, right? You still need to find locators, and Appium Desktop will help you to basically to record and find more or less well-suited locators. You might find yourself in desktop application need to adjust them from time to time, but usually it works pretty fine. And then the rest is the same, really. So, this is, guys, about desktop application. Let me see what more questions we have so far. Yeah, there are I'm just answering here live. Natalia, there are breakpoints here. So if I just go back to some scripts that we already executed, just a second. So let's go back to Selenium script, right? I can put breakpoint here. And I just will run this test again. And go back to Oxygen. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, okay. And you see the green arrow has stopped on our breakpoint. Okay, I can see here all my variables that are defined. Okay, and I can carry on, for example, here. Okay. Yeah, and I see now the visible book variable is number, and its value is assigned as 1. Okay. So yeah, I can debug it. I can just breakpoint it to make sure, I can analyze the page. I can go ahead here now and open DevTools if I need so. So it's very handy. Okay. And then, of course, I can carry on with my test. Okay. Hope it answers your question. We go back here. Then. Okay, let me see what we have in the chat. Okay, cool. Okay, guys. So we went through basics of Oxygen. We went through how we create projects in Oxygen, how we do different tests, mobile, web, and so on. Now, what I want to show you is 2 more things. I want just briefly show you a Cucumber project, and I will explain you why Cucumber might be important. And B, I want to show you how to work with our command line, which is important because whenever you want to run your real tests, say in CI environment, then you will need to run them from command line. Okay, Oxygen ID is just a development environment. Okay, in production, or when you want to run your real test, you will have to use Oxygen CLI, and I will show you some basics of it. Okay, and this probably will be it for today. So we have another probably 10-15 minutes, and then I will leave it open for your questions. Okay. So first, let's start with Cucumber. Let me close this one. Okay. So let me show Cucumber project. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So this is a Cucumber project. The main difference here is in configuration file. So it's the same configuration file, just what different here is that we have a Cucumber option section. Okay. Most of it, you just take it as is from our Git repository, so you don't really need to change it. And again, this and ng examples are available publicly in our Git repository. What you do need to sometimes change it is a tag expression. So basically, the way you run tests in Cucumber, you tag them, and then you can specify which tags you want to run, okay? And so in this case, it says Wikipedia. We will see feature files in a moment, okay? But this is the main difference, and then another one is a framework, okay? You can see that the framework that is specified here is Cucumber and not Oxygen. Now, let's see the structure of Cucumber project. So first of all, we typically will create a folder called features. We can call it anyway we just need to specify it here. You can see the spec file, so we can say where our feature files are. Now, let me explain you what Cucumber is and what feature file is for those of you who are not familiar, just really in few words. So let me open, say, the same Wikipedia project, okay? Or let's do Google one, okay? The whole idea of Cucumber is to use, business-driven language in your test. As you can see, this is a test, right? And the way it explained is very non-technical, right? So I define which feature I want to test. I define who I am, okay? What persona I am as one who testing it. Okay, and then I define some conditions, okay? So I say, in order to run this test, I need to be in Google page, and the title of the page should be Google, right? So I want to make sure I'm in the right page. And then those are tags, as you can see here, so I can tag, and there are scenarios. Scenarios are test cases, right? So I have here scenario, search results should display the search term, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is a definition of scenario, and then I have precondition, okay, that the page title is Google. Then I'm going to enter search, in search box, I'm going to enter cats, and click search button. And then I expect the page will contain cats. So, you know, from first glance, it might look a bit awkward, okay? But, you know, as your tests getting bigger and as you have more shareholders in your organization that are involved in your testing efforts or in your CI/CD pipeline, then reporting your results in this way makes a lot of sense. Now you can ask how it works. I mean, this is just a text page, right? So how come we can actually run it and attach some Selenium stuff to it? So the way it works, each sentence like this, right, is binded to a certain step, okay? So for example, we have it divided to given, then, and when. So if we see given steps, right? So we have a sentence which say, I open the page or URL, and then this one means that this is parameter, right? So, you know, we can say, I open, let's see here, one moment. I open the URL, right? And whatever is inside of double quotes is a parameter, so I can change it, okay? It's not predefined. And then it means that we will create a function here, open website, right? Which gets a parameter and then executes some Selenium stuff, okay? So let's try to find it, okay? Open website, right? So I see here function open website, okay? This is just a regular JavaScript function which just goes and using our web model to open a page, okay? So effectively, it's something similar a bit to page object pattern we saw. Even so, you can edge page object pattern also on top of feature file and on top of Cucumber. But again, it's a similar that we divide our functionality and our common elements and common usage patterns, we divide them into external files that we can reuse, okay? So you can see that this sentence can be reused across different scenarios, okay? I open the URL. Once we implement it, we now can use it in any one of those scenarios, right? So I have I open URL here, I have I open URL here. It's the same code which implements it, right? But the beauty of Cucumber is that it can be used across different scenarios, and it can be used also by manual testers. So once you have implemented the sentences, you can give to anyone in your organization, even to your product owners, to basically be able to run and analyze your tests, right? And write your tests, okay, which is great, without need to know Oxygen, you know, Selenium, and all this, okay? So just wanted to show you, you know, really briefly how Cucumber project looks like. So you will, feature files will go here, you know, given, when, then will go here. And then you can either run a feature file. So I can press run here and then we will run a feature file. Or I can, if I go to my configuration file, I can also run my configuration file. Then it will run any feature file that answers this tag expression, okay? So I can either go ahead and run it one by one, okay? Or I can go into configuration file and run an entire suite, whatever is defined here. Okay, so just wanted to quickly show you a Cucumber one. And then now let me just, the last one is just to show you how Oxygen CLI works. So just you know, to make an order here. So Oxygen ID, right? You're downloading from our either documentation page or our main page or our GitHub, right? So generally, I do encourage you to go to our Git repository, okay? Here, Oxygen HQ. You can find here all the examples, you know, the examples you see Oxygen examples ng and so on. And you can find the source code so you can see how we implement stuff. And if you want to download Oxygen ID, again, you can do it from documentation or from our website, or just go here and go to releases, okay? And this is where you can always see both change logs, so you can see what is included in the latest ID version. And you can find all the installations that you can see: Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, okay? So this is one thing. Another one is when you want Oxygen CLI. If you want Oxygen CLI, okay, then this is NPM project. I will explain you what it means. So in Node.js world, okay, you have node models. And node models are installed through NPM. NPM is kind of repository. So instead of Node.js being supplied with all possible models, which will make it probably size terabytes, so Node.js is coming in very light form, and then you can add different models. So Oxygen is just a Node.js model. So in order to run Oxygen from your command line, all you need to do, to install Node. We recommend to install at the moment Node 11, and and we will going to support Node 12 soon. And all you need to do once you have Node.js, you have npm, which is a Node.js package manager. So you can do npm I Oxygen CLI. This is the name of Oxygen command line. Okay, and you do -g. So what it means is I means install Oxygen CLI model, and -g means make it global. Now, the reason why you want to make it global is because you want to be able to write Oxygen from anywhere in your operating system. For example, here, right? I can write Oxygen, and this is our CLI tool, right? So as you can see, it basically accepts different types of files. So it can accept JavaScript file, okay? And it can accept JSON file, or it can accept a folder. So if you work with project configuration, as I shown you in the last two examples, then you will just provide it a folder. So it can preload configuration file, it can preload page objects and all this. If you work with a single test file, or you want just to run a suite, then you can define your suite in JSON file or run a JavaScript file. Okay, let's just run a simple example. Okay, so let's run a JavaScript file here. So again, I will go to my desktop and to our workshop example, simple. Okay, and what I can do, right? So I can either just go here and run it, or do Oxygen and just provide a full pass. Okay, so you see, I just provided the full pass to my JavaScript file, and all I need to do is just hit the enter. Okay, so you see the Oxygen engine is initialized, and we see the test is running here. Okay, now see the weird thing here, because we haven't bind parameters. So you see that actually we're using parameter name instead of parameter value. Okay, and you see also it's much more detailed output here than you saw in Oxygen ID. Okay, now what you could see, we have created reports here, reports folder automatically, and you can see our standard HTML report. Okay, so this is our standard HTML report, right? And you can see it failed here, right? Because it's can't assert, we didn't bind parameters. And we can see the error and the screenshot here, okay? Now, in order to bind parameters, we will use the parameters switch, okay? If you, again, just hit Oxygen, you will see it hints you what kind of parameters you could use, right? So you see minus params. So if we want to add parameters, we could use param equals, and then we can specify a parameter file. Okay. So now if we will run this test, we should get our parameters being resolved. You see? Now our parameters being resolved. We still run it for a single iteration, but our parameter is resolved, right? If we want to run it in more than this, okay, and here we go. Okay, again, we will have another report here, as you can see here being generated. Okay. And this time we just, you remember we changed test one. So this time we have our title, and indeed failed because we have mismatch between assert title and the one which is current. So this is just a basics. If we want to run it multiple iterations, that we will use -i parameter. Okay, so I can say -i equals 2. This means we will run it twice. Okay. Again, it's very handy. We can also specify, we'll show you, we can specify, for example, JSON format or genuine XML format. There are a number of parameters there. You can see our documentation. It's very flexible and very powerful. So once you have all your tests ready, so you will run them through Oxygen CLI, either in your CI/CD environment or any other environment you would use. You see here also much more details logs being outputted here, so you can see it in much more details. This one will succeed. Yeah, you can see here another one. Okay. Yeah, so here you can see it's really nice that one iteration failed and one has passed. Okay, and you can drill down and see why it failed on one it passed. Another parameter it's important to show you is --RF, which is a reporting format. You see, so we usually would like to change it, for example, from HTML to JSON or to JUnit XML, right? So what we will do, we will run the same with RF equals to JUnit. Okay, and in this case, you will see that Oxygen will create an XML file which will represent JUnit XML format. Again, pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but very powerful. There are more switches that you should know, like --inf. This is the environment one. This is where you can switch between different environments. You can switch between different suits, --suits. Again, you can find it all in our documentation. So I will not just get into too many details. You can see XML file here. Okay. So if I will just open this XML file, then we will see that it includes our XML, JUnit XML. Here we go. Okay. Okay, guys, I hope this session was useful. I want to leave time for questions. So again, it's just a first meeting in a series of meetings. So we will do on mobile a separate workshop, and then we will also do a workshop on more advanced topics when we can get into more details to see how different Oxygen models work and how to overcome different situations in Selenium and Appium. So, you know, just subscribe to Oxygen newsletter, and we will notify you on next meetings. And now I want just to open it up for your questions. Okay. So feel free just to ask them. If you were missing something in the session and you want to ask, or you want us to add it in the next sessions, just please go ahead. You can either ask us through Q&A in the toolbar below the Zoom, or you can just write in the chat, whatever you prefer, guys. Yeah, no questions? Okay. Cool. Guys, and I will... Thanks, Pierre. Most, it means you might have still some questions. Anyway, you don't have to ask them now, it's up to you. I will just show you the contact details. So feel free, guys, to contact me and us, our team. We have also great forum, so feel free to ask your questions and communicate us through forum or through GitHub. It's up to you. We are very accessible. So let me just show you the last slide in the presentation so you can see my contact details. Here we go. Just to show them to you quickly. And so, guys, I encourage you really to just download Oxygen, play with it. And either if you are, at the beginning of your test automation career, then, use recording, use just, basic stuff to get started and learn test automation, Selenium through it. And if you are more advanced and looking for, advanced testing framework, then just, use Oxygen as a framework, as one of your Node.js models. And you will discover there are many things that will just save you a huge amount of time and will make your test much more stable than just working directly with the Selenium or with any other frameworks. So go ahead, try it out. We are here for you. So you have forum, you have GitHub, you have my email address here. So feel free to approach and subscribe to our newsletter, and looking forward to see you in our next sessions. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great remaining of the day, or I would say evening, probably depends where you are based. If you are in the US, you're just starting your day, and we'll see you in the next sessions. Guys, thanks for attending. Take care and bye-bye.